You're listening to Ernestly Speaking, the only weekly podcast that covers friends, foes, and anything that goes. And now, for your badass host, Ernest Owens. And we're back for another episode of Ernestly Speaking with your host, Ernest Owens, myself. Well, this has been a week, I must say. This February, all these Aquariuses, all these birthdays, it's driving me crazy, but in all the good ways. This past week, I recovered from my trip from LA and gave you all back-to-back hits. I mean, I feel like Taylor Swift right now, just dropping albums, every so months. But I gave you all, about 4 episodes in the past week. We had 2 special editions, a regular episode, and now this episode within a week. So I feel like a rapper with a bunch of mixtapes, or Taylor Swift, or Rihanna in the 2010s, because that run she had in the 2010s. I mean, it was almost like an album every year. I think it was at one point, like at least 4 albums throughout my college years. It was like back to back to back. And now we can't even get a single from her. It's. I told one of my friends, Dr. Parks, I said, this is your fault. Because she used to always just, go after Rihanna and just be like, oh, she's just dropping albums after albums. She did take a break. 10 years later, she's still on that break. I blame people like her for just making this, making us all have to wait, saying, oh, just, too many albums. Now we got artists giving us albums that we don't want every year. I'm a Swiftie with concerns. Let me be clear about that. I'm a concerned Swiftie, but we'll talk more about her later in this Super Bowl conversation. But, I don't need another album from Taylor Swift right now. I was okay with, the Taylor's versions of the album she need to re-record, Like I was waiting for Reputation, I was waiting for that. Now this new album, I don't know. I'm not even concerned. I mean, at this point, she's overexposed. I mean, after this whole Super Bowl situation, I think she's just overexposed. And what's going to happen, anyone who's been following her knows that what's going to happen to her is what happened 10 years ago. She gets super, super famous. And then, it gets to her head. And then, and then, of course, everyone else gets to a point where the questions start coming. High speculation. And even though she's gotten older and she's been able to navigate this a little bit differently, it's still going to come. And then, of course, it's going to be the, victim narrative of, oh, I'm a billionaire and I'm being attacked, and it's gonna be all that all over again. So I'm just kind of, I don't know. I kind of just feel like the oversaturation is in many ways a buzzkill and also a trap, right? Because it's a way that those who weren't already fans can now, use that as a way to justify, supporting whatever crazy narratives are said about her. So that's my concern as a Swiftie. And also the music, I just, the new music coming out, I don't know. But anyway, this week is, a love week, Valentine's Day, my anniversary, which I'm super excited about. This year, it'll be 10 years since me and Mr. Johnson's been together as a couple. A decade. Which is, it just feels like, it does feel like 10 years slightly. But there's a part of me that's like, wow, it really has been that long. Who would have thought? But, I tell people with relationships, they're like exercises, You have to be consistent. You have to, perfect your technique. And you got to try new ones. You got to try new things. You got to try new, approaches. And, That's how it works. I don't know what my advice is for long-term relationships. I mean, for starters, be real about what you want. I think too many people are getting in relationships based on convenience. They feel like, oh, because we live next to each other, because we're in the same city, that means we must be together. Not necessarily. Or certain type of social status. They're like, oh, well, we're in the same network, so we have to be together. It's the arguments of, well, we both went to the same this, we did the same this, so therefore we should. Or it's the narrative of, we've been, hitting each other up for quite some time, so it's time for us to finally get serious. And it's like, no. Like, it shouldn't feel like you're in a place of obligation. It shouldn't feel forced. It should feel effortless. It should feel organic. That's the best way I would describe it. Like, relationships, like romantic relationships, should not feel forced. It should feel like it's a situation, that, both parties are willing and enthusiastically invested in. Now, throughout the relationship, there will always be its peaks and valleys and all those things in between. But the pursuit of being in a relationship with the person should feel more natural and not as forced. I think what made this relationship very different compared to my previous relationships is that both of us didn't necessarily have a reason to be in a relationship with the exception of us just actually liking each other. And that is a very, when you think about it, it might sound cold at first to be like, where there's no other reason why we together, but that is actually the real reasons, because oftentimes people will create scenarios to be relationships. Oh, we had a baby together, or this person, lost their job and they need to stay with me, and they, something happened to them, and then therefore, I came in to be a care provider, and through that, I proved myself worthy of a ring or a relationship. And like, those type of dynamics, sometimes they work. Sometimes they work. But then sometimes they become a situation where somebody they will throw up in your face. I've had people I know that were like, oh, I'm with this person, and, years down the road, they start evaluating, what caused them to get together when they had hard times. It was people bringing up the fact that, oh, I really didn't want to be with you, or I was only with you because this happened, and now I'm, yada, yada, yada. That's always a recipe for disaster. It always is, to be in a situation where there's material reasons, there's external reasons, or a sense of crisis that creates the dynamic. Because trust and believe, when there's problems in a relationship, someone's going to throw it up in someone's face. And it's never a good situation to be in, where you have to wonder, if this didn't happen, would we be together? And so the beautiful thing about, my relationship is that there was no obligations. There was no, fear. There was no, circumstance that made it, put us in this position to be together. It was just a simple, desire, attraction, interest, pursuit. And it just, organically kind of happened. And that, I think, is why it's lasted as long, because, there's no sense of, how do I describe it? There's no sense of obligation. There's no sense of, oh my goodness, if I don't have them, this won't happen. And also, I would add, the big piece of advice I guess I'll give is date your equal. Date your equal. And that's not equal in just like this whole conversation around finance and social status, but date someone that is compatible to you and your goals and the things that you want for your life. And the same for them, right? Like date your equal. Because it might start off, initially like, oh, I'm if you're coming into the relationship thinking that you're goodwill to somebody, that's a recipe for disaster. It really is. Like, you come into the relationship thinking that you're leveling somebody up, or that you're doing them something, you're an upgrade for them, but you don't see them as that for you. That's always a bad dynamic. That's always going to end. That's going to always end in flames. And I've seen so many women, and I've seen, even some guys. I know a couple of guys where they'll date somebody that is not their equal. And again, equal is relative. It's not, people will always think equal is we both, we're millionaires. No, it's not. I'm not. It's equal can be whatever you want it, but what an equal is to you. When you're equally yoked with somebody. When you're with somebody that is your peer compared to your mentee. When somebody is, on your level, and when you know what that feels like. And I tell people, don't get a relationship based on goodwill. Like, oh, I'm with this person and I know they're not my equal, but, they really like me and they're infatuated with me. And they're going to be good to me because they're going to be so grateful that someone like me has humbled myself to date them. It doesn't work that way. I know women who have dated men that they had no business dating, and then thought that because, they thought they were the prize in the dynamic, that somehow this person was going to worship them in a way that they thought their quote unquote equal wouldn't. And as a result of that, it was no different, because at the end of the day, a man is going to do what a man is going to do if he has bad intentions. Whether he's rich, whether he's poor, whether he's smart, whether he's dumb, if he's a dog, he's a dog. You can't escape that, And I think there's this myth that I've seen a lot of my educated friends that are women, would do. They will say, oh, I'm going to get this, random dude and date them and think, they're going to be all the things that, I want them to be because of who I am and what I stand on. Problem is that the problem with that is that it's weird because it's never it never evolves. It never gets there. Whatever you think that praise or that worship is, because one could argue they may not even know how to appreciate you. Looking back at some of my past relationships, when I was dating people that were not on my level, my equal, I had those same mindsets like, oh, look at me, look what look who I am. I was like, I'm at this really good school, I'm smart, I'm accomplished, I'm all right. And, I was dating certain people that I thought, ooh, they're going to be impressed by this. But in my mind, I wasn't realizing that once you get with someone that you're not equally yoked with, the dynamics change, because in that mindset, their head is like, well, if I was able to bag this person, then I'm already there. And so I wouldn't say it's a lowering your standards, but it's a mindset that on the opposite end with them, they think that the dynamic is equal automatically, because if you are granting them this access to you in this way, then they feel like there isn't no differentiation. And so everything gets started off in a very weird, funky space, because you done enabled somebody yourself in a way that has validated things that you may have wanted them to improve on, but it's never going to get improved on, because they feel like if they can get you with all of those flaws, then what needs to be improved? And I think that's what's the most important thing to consider is, I'm not trying to, shake up people's Valentine's Day, but I'm just saying that, now's the time to start having those questions or reevaluating those questions. If you've been in a situation for a long time or even a short time and you find yourself, going back to how this all began, what caused it? Why are you still in it? What's keeping you still going? Go back to the beginning. Look at the foundation to which it was laid. Is this somebody that you took from somebody else? Was they in a previous situation and you kind of, did a Brangelina situation? Was this a situation where, when you got with them, you was downtrodden, it was a desperate situation and they picked you up from the gutter and now, you done got on your feet and you realizing that certain things they were doing ain't the same? Is it a forced relationship based on convenience? It's just, we together, I don't got nowhere else to go. These are the questions that you should ask yourself. Just saying, things to consider. So, this week is going to be romantic. We have some anniversary plans that's going to kind of go together with the Valentine's Day. And then this week, it's also later on at the end of the week, Mr. Johnson's birthday on the 17th. So that's going to be a big deal. And we're doing it low key. He wants to do it low key for his birthday. He doesn't want to do a big old birthday party. I'm like the birthday party person. Like I'm going to always have some birthday bash and I'm going to do something. But he wanted to take it, real chill because next year he has a big, I guess what they would call it, like anniversary year birthday, like a big old monument. And so I think he's saving all of his, his social battery for that. So this year is going to be a little bit more chill. But nonetheless, in addition to birthdays, speaking of birthdays, like this past week, I had back-to-back birthdays. So my good Judy Sharon had a birthday. We went to Ocean Prime, which I haven't been to Ocean Prime in a long time. And it was good. It was good. I mean, she really liked it. I mean, she's into steakhouses and seafood tower. That's like her thing. And her birthday was on a Tuesday, but we did it on a Monday. We celebrated together on a Monday. There wasn't that many really popping restaurants open. I mean, like Philadelphia and Mondays are like not the best. Like I feel like a lot of these major restaurants open on like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they take a break the rest of the week. It's interesting. But Ocean Prime was open, and so we went there, and it was fabulous. It was good. And I haven't been there in years, but you know what? I don't know if they have a new chef or whatever, but everything was pretty good. Everything was pretty good. Everything was consistent. And I forgot how much I really like their cocktails. Yeah, I really, looking back, thinking about this one drink I had, it was like a berry bubbles drink where it like bubbled. It was like a berry focused like martini glass. And it had like all these, like, it had like I guess they call it ice rock or whatever. And like bubbles. In my head, I call like the Ursula Sea Witch drink. Like, it bubbles up, but it's really good. And then they had another orchard martini that was really fun too. But I really liked the drinks. And I mean, the food was good too. I mean, I didn't have any complaints. The next place I went to this week to really celebrate my good friend Manny, another Aquarius, we went to Oloroso and did the tasting menu. Now I went back to Oloroso after a couple of weeks. I think it was December. Barry and I had went, and it was fabulous. It was a very good time. They're consistently excellent. They're starting to grow on me. This Spanish tapas spot that's in Midtown Village, the neighborhood, they got a nice little thing going. What's interesting about that restaurant is that when you go inside, on the outside, it looks like it's a small little restaurant, but they got a huge wide back. Like, this restaurant is huge, but it's like vertical. So like, normally when you walk in a restaurant, you see a wide opening. But this is kind of reminds me of these South Philly, row homes where on the outside it looks like, oh, this little small little, little cozy little house. But then when you go inside, it's got a lot in the back going. So it stretches on the opposite end, expands. But the food was incredible again. Definitely a gem for sure. I don't think enough people are talking about it. It's owned by Townsend, which also owns a new restaurant, the Spanish Italian restaurant. Well, let me say that again. It was the Italian seafood restaurant. I keep saying Spanish because Oloroso is Spanish tapas, but Outramare, which is the new restaurant by Townsend, it is an Italian seafood restaurant. And he also owns Townsend in general. And then he also owns Caribou Cafe, which is that new French, well, not new, but that French restaurant across the street. He's taken over that. And so he's got a nice little, a little thing going. He's getting all these major, restaurants. He's about to take over. This is Townsend Wentz, by the way, who is known for his original restaurant, Townsend, which is the French restaurant that is in, well, it was in Passyunk. Now I think it's relocated again. I think it's back at Passyunk again. It's moved around a couple of times, but he has another restaurant, an Italian restaurant called Levutu or something, I think it's called, which I'm actually going to be going to very soon to check out. But he's got a nice little run going on for sure. And it was a good dinner. It was a lot of courses, so I had to pace myself. I forgot how many tasting menus are really out here, putting a run for the money, for sure. Also, as you all saw this weekend, I went to Dizengoff, which is interesting because it's almost like Dizengoff, I want to say 3.0 or 2.0. I feel like it's at many variations. But this variation, I think, is its best. It started off as a fast casual space. So for those who remember it was right next to Goldie. It's over there on Sansom Street. It was, Solomov and Cook, Cook and Solo, as they know affectionately. It's Mediterranean, Israeli food. Originally there was Abe Fisher, which is no longer open, which was a good restaurant back then. I used to love going there for Restaurant Week. But with Dizengoff, this place was like a fast casual situation. And so, there's a lot of these, with the Cook and Solomon brand, they got a bunch of different restaurants that are doing different things. So Goldie is like the fast casual space that is very, let me describe it, like, vegan based. I don't really think they serve meat there, but it's like really quick, fast casual. Then you have that's Goldie. Then you have Kafar, which is the bakery, and Kafar is very like, there's some, you can eat dinner there and there's some breakfast, but it's like very bakery focused. Then you have Zahav, which is their elevated fine dining experience. Then you have Laser Wolf, which is not fine dining, but another, grand, restaurant of its own, but it's a little bit more of a grill space, whatever. But now Dizengoff, I feel like, is the same energy as Laser Wolf, except it's in Center City. And so that's my observation. So I like Dizengoff. It's really good. I like the restaurant. It's now that it's a full-fledged, grand restaurant, it's really nice. Of course, there's Federal Donuts as well, which is, donuts and chicken sandwiches. But with this inception of Dizengoff, if you want to know what I think, first of all, I thought it was great. The food was good. I liked everything on the menu. I guess what I would say is it feels like Laser Wolf, except Laser Wolf has a little bit of a wider menu. But I would say that for people who cannot get a reservation, Laser Wolf, can't go over to Old Kensington, too far out, but you're looking for something a little bit more accessible or nearby, I feel like Dizengoff is that. I feel like they have similar things, but I feel like Laser Wolf has a more expansive menu, but Dizengoff has some really good-ass cocktails. Oh my goodness. The cocktails were phenomenal. And the portion sizes were really good. And you know what I would say? Dizengoff had a very good curated menu. Like, their menu was very focused. You're there for the hummus, you're there for the pita, you're there for a couple of cool, shareable small plates, a couple of plates that you can share. They're much larger. Like I told people before, Cook and Solomov, Cook and Solo, they, that duo, they don't miss on a braised lamb. No matter what restaurant I've been to that is by Michael Solomonov and Steve Cook, the lamb is always the bomb. You can never miss the lamb. Whether it's a braised lamb shake, a pomegranate molasses lamb, whatever type of lamb, get the lamb there. For sure. And get something from seafood. They had a dorade that was also really good. Their seafood is always good too. But the lamb You're not going to miss the lamb. But yeah, I was fairly impressed. I mean, I don't think they have any misses. I don't think I've ever been to a bad cooking solo restaurant. I don't know if they've ever made a bad restaurant. I feel like everything they do, you know what it is? They stay in their lane. They know what they do well, and they expand off of it. So, you can't go wrong with that. So, before I get into Lit Brothers Live, I noticed that a lot of you all had peeped that I was on the Shade Room, which was, interesting, to say the least. So I was called on by the Shade Room. Now, let me be clear. I am very critical of the Shade Room. I have my concerns like anybody else about that platform. What I will say is that it's interesting because they have a team. So there's an investigator there. It's a black gay man who I actually know, who is hired to be an investigator to do like deeper dive stories. And so I guess they're trying to incorporate journalism, maybe some element of it, but he's been hired and he's been in the position for a little bit. But he's hired to do these deeper investigative reporting stories on major news issues. And so he was interested in doing something on the ski mask ban in Philadelphia, which you all know I've been very critical of. And he reached out to me. I knew him already, wanted to help the brother out. And I did an interview that they did. They did a solid reporting on it. Because it was him doing it. And they did a report about just like the reaction and whether or not this was effective. I don't want to tell too much of it. You can find it on their site. But the clip went out and people saw that I was in the clip and everybody was DMing me and messaging me. And I was like, yeah, that's me. It was me, But it was an important topic. And if I'm going to do something, I don't do bullshit. I don't do the dumbness. If I'm going to come on and do something, it's going to be something of substance. Now, what I will say, and I don't want to throw shade, but I mean, it's going to land where it's going to land. I'm not going on the Breakfast Club. Like, listen, if I go on the Breakfast Club, I'm going to go there and I'm going to drag everybody on the show. They're not going to like me. I'm going to go there and I'm purposely going to troll them. I'm going to troll them to the point that they may not even want me to come back on. Because all of them are going to get that work. Like, I would go on the show to purposely shade each and every one of them. Like, the show would be spicy. It wouldn't even be about whatever I'm on there to talk about. And heaven forbid they want me to come on there and talk about the case for council culture, because all three of the hosts, including the new one, all of them are accountable to me. DJ Envy, Charlemagne, Less Hilarious, all of them, So I would, I would, they wouldn't want me to come on there. But like, if I'm going to go on there, I would go on there for those reasons. Because I'm looking at certain people go on the show and I'm just looking at them like, how do you defend this? How do you take the bait? Like how do you convince everybody to go on there for you, but nothing else? That's the shit that, yeah. Like, unless you're gonna do something subversive, I don't see the point. Like, unless it's gonna be something subversive, something that's like out of this world, that's gonna shake the table. I don't get the aesthetic. I don't get the point. That's my personal opinion. Some people, who claim they're so pro-black or black as fuck, as they will try to describe themselves, find themselves on that show just like the rest of the folks when they have the kind of influence that could do something different. So yeah, definitely a lot to consider there. So I'm excited about the Lit Brothers Live. I mean, the listens have been through the roof. A lot of you all have been messaging me, hitting me up. It's been just an abundance of love and interest in the show. I mean, the event was super successful. I mean, it was packed for a Wednesday at Hard Rock Cafe. Like, we were inside that Philadelphia room, which was a very private, intimate setting. I really loved it. I loved the whole vibe. I mean, shout out to our incredible sponsors, everybody who came through and supported Hard Rock Cafe, Cashman Associates, Philadelphia Distilling / Blue Coat, Radio Kensington. Everybody came through and showed up and showed out. And what really made it fun was that people really were in tune the whole time. I was always wondering in myself, like, oh, if we do this live recording, people are going to get antsy. People are going to want to go eat and get drinks and ignore us. But people were hooked, like glued in. And so when you heard that live recording, for those who weren't there, there was a room with about a little over 50 people in that room. And it was so intimate, but yet people was respectfully engaged. And that was cool. That was fascinating. I mean, just all the different folks that did make appearances and show up, and the great questions that were asked and the great conversations. I mean, we really spilled the tea. What we thought was going to be an hour episode became roughly 90 minutes, but it was engaging. And, it was a moment. And the good news is it will not be the last time we'll get together. We're probably going to do something in the summer. But this is going to be a thing. We're going to be doing this on the regular. So you can expect to see us and hear us on a regular basis. Not every week, but this is the success of that Hard Rock Cafe experience. Our partners, the people who were involved, were so impressed that they want to do this again. And so we'll be doing it probably again in the summer. The venue might change. There might be another, idea, but there will be us, and there will be a live recording, and there'll be an event for the public, for the fans, of course. And stay tuned. But it was definitely a great introduction, and everyone who was involved, everyone who was there, was very happy about it. And yeah, I'm happy about it. So just want to give a thank you to everybody who showed up. And shout out to my good friend Laura. She came through with these personalized Lip Brother bracelets that were so cute and unique and so thoughtful. And it's just like those types of things that just remind us that you can have an idea in your head, a vision for something, but if you just stay focused and you execute it, it can take off and take shape. Something that you might think is a little joke or something cute and fun can be something that's going to make a difference and inspire other people. So that really felt good. So I just want to thank you all for that. So let's get into these hot topics. I mean, there is so much to dig into. And, I think one thing that I really want to talk about in this episode is really talk about this, Trump and Biden, because this week has been a big week for both of them. Both of them did their big ones. And not necessarily the greatest ways, but I know a lot of people have been having questions about the Trump legal stuff, because at this point it is hard to keep up with all his lawsuits and legal troubles and victories. So here's what you need to know, because I did a lot of research, I did a lot of reading, I did a lot of listening, I did a lot of watching to really try to figure out what does this shit mean, right? Because there's too much going on. Okay, so last week's episode, I talked about how there was an appeal process and how specifically the Court of Appeals, which is under the Supreme Court, in a unanimous 3-0 decision, basically said that the former president, Trump, does this presidential immunity shit is baloney, that he does not get a get out of jail free pass because he's the president of the United States. That he basically that the charges against him related to insurrection can still go on. He tried to fight against that case. The biggest one is this federal case against him about his role in, overturning the 2021 election. Or the 2020 election, but his involvement in that insurrection on January 6, 2021. That is happening. So far, that's the go. Now, Monday, as you all listen to this podcast, Trump it's looking like he's going to file an appeal. That's the deadline to appeal this decision. And while he's trying to appeal the decision, he's going to take it up. It looks like he might appeal within the courts, or he may take it to the Supreme Court. And we're going to get to what's going on with the Supreme Court, because you all probably heard about that as well. So let's stay focused on one case, because I'm going to show you how both of these cases are connected but not connected. But let's stay focused on this first one. So long story short, as of right now, the case against him related to whether or not he did insurrection, that trial is still moving forward. And we can see, based on the time calendar, that trial will take place either this spring or the summer. Whether or not a verdict will come before the election, that's out of our reach. But what we do know is that this trial will take place before the election. Whether or not the verdict comes before then, the likelihood of it is or isn't. But let me also say that the courts do not work on election schedules. So this thirst for, we got to get him guilty before the election and knock him off the ballot. I hear it, and that's a desire from voters, but courts don't work that way, right? There's still a procedure. There's still a process. There's still a due process. And so the likelihood of the guilty verdict coming before the election, to be honest with y'all, I doubt that will happen. So if, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just being real. However, the trial itself and the drama will definitely put a dent in his campaign activity. It's going to be hard for a man at his age to be getting on planes, campaigning, while also dealing with the trial and going through multiple trials, because he's hit it with legal woes and all this money. Let's not even get into it, right? So there's a lot going on here. This is very expensive. He is deep in legal troubles. So that's currently what's happening. So let's be clear. He could appeal the Court of Appeals, right? He could take it up with the court, and fight it out with them. So two things happen. He could appeal to the court or go straight to the Supreme Court. I doubt that he's going to appeal within the current courts that's under the Supreme Court, because they're the ones who made the decision. So I can see him going straight to the Supreme Court and forcing them to make a decision. And whatever they decide will then be the decision. We're going to get more into that in a minute. So, separately, there was a Supreme Court appeal that did go to the Supreme Court. And it's looking like, right now, we don't know yet, but it's looking like the Supreme Court, this is regarding Colorado. So as you all know, Colorado took, the Colorado courts have taken Trump off the ballot as of right now, because they argue that as somebody who is, being charged for insurrection, yada, 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 that person shouldn't be on a ballot, right? That's the argument. Trump is taking it to the Supreme Court. There were arguments heard early last week. Listening to what the Supreme Court justices are saying, it's 6-3. 6 conservatives, 3 liberals. But in this case, it doesn't seem like it's a straight up, decision being made by all the liberals or conservatives are divided. There seems to be some justices that are liberal that are in favor of what conservatives are arguing. So the argument right now is that they're saying, I think the overarching argument is that, one is that, did Colorado jump the gun in taking Trump off the ballot? And if so, what amendments? The 14th Amendment, there's other amendments being brought up to justify this. What I'm getting and what I'm gathering is that, and again, I'm not defending Trump, but I'm just keeping it 100. I understand the logic that's being proposed right now. The argument is Trump has not officially been convicted of this crime. So to take him off the ballot right now is a little premeditative, is a little bit premature, that Colorado jumped the gun. And so I predicted the Supreme Court will rule in Trump's favor. He will get back on the Colorado ballot. That's going to happen, I think. And that's going to be the compromise. However, that being said, I don't see, anything beyond that. I don't see Trump getting anything outside of that victory to the Supreme Court. Like, I feel like there's going to be one giveaway and one non-giveaway. That's how they work often. So I can see them, I could see them, I could see them being like, oh, okay, Colorado overstepped. Let's show some judicial constraint and be fair. Keep him on the ballot, because at the end of the day, he's not been criminally convicted. If he was criminally convicted, then he would be off the ballot. A lot of people could say that this case took too long to get to this point. But at the end of the day, that's no one's, that ain't nobody's. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? The courts don't work for elections. But here we go. So, what I predict is the Supreme Court will get him back on the ballot in Colorado. What I don't want y'all to do, and I get annoyed, because some people just, every time they see something on Twitter, they react to it, they just throw up the towel, they play into the doom scrolling. Y'all relax. I just feel like if you're going to doom scroll, be informed. Just stop reading every fucking headline and just jumping up and panicking and doing this gotta stop. It's annoying. I've just ignored things. Like, I ignore a lot of DMs I get. I don't respond because I just feel like it's a waste of time. I would rather read, think critically, and then respond. And so there's people that will do that for algorithm, right? Panic-inducing, fear-inducing content on social media and media outlets, they do well. You're going to click it. You're going to, whatever. It's the nature of the business, sadly, at this point. But that all being said, there is, I think optimistic and also realistic optimistic content, right? Like, I'm not acting like this is the end all be all of the election, but you gotta be able to measure things and consider things and not think there's a mass conspiracy at every second. So yeah, all I'm going to do is just observe what happens with both of these cases, because I think these are the big ones, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of other things going on, but I'm focused on these two cases with Trump because I feel like this is where the money's at, right? Like, if he is found to be an insurrectionist and charged criminally, not criminally charged, he's already been charged, but convicted, then that's it. Game over. The Colorado ballot thing, I feel like that's a wrap. When it first happened, I did sense to myself, it was a great moment, but it wasn't going to do anything because my mind was like, well, yeah, it's cool to think that they could do that. But then I'm also thinking to myself, technically he's being accused. They can't give him a penalty based off of a charge, There has to be some conviction. But I think that outside of the convictions, there has to be another conversation to just be had about how these cases are overlapping. And maybe voters will figure out how they feel about that. But, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, so far, he's doing well, his primary, which is no surprise. Nikki is staying as strong as she can. I think she's banking on something catastrophic to happen that will give her momentum. So far, that's not the case. I'm looking to see what's going to happen in South Carolina, because that's going to really tell whether or not this is going to go left or right. Um, but we'll see. We'll see on that. So with Biden, this Biden situation has been interesting. A lot of people have been trying to figure out what all this means. So, earlier, last year, there was an investigation into Biden's documents. There was some classified documents that Biden had. And this is also similar to an investigation. Trump also has a case going on about him with some classified documents. The difference between Trump and Biden is that Trump was criminally charged for how he handled classified documents. A new special prosecutor who looked into this, who is, let me preface this by saying, this was a Trump, appointed attorney. He was hired by the Trump administration. He's a strong conservative. Let me just preface by saying that. This guy, his last name is Hur, H-U-R. He was a special prosecutor that investigated Biden's use of these documents and basically came to the conclusion that it wasn't criminal, which means there's no criminal charges. And so all of the, salation around this investigation around Biden, was Biden going to be, charged? It kind of reminds me of the whole, Comey case when Comey was looking into Hillary's emails and it was all that drama with James Comey, who, I don't like him. I struggle with him because, I don't find him to be this grand hero, in my opinion. But anywho, what's so funny is that what you find is that during elections, like presidential, election periods, there's all these like massive scandals and everyone's all on the edge of their seat. And then when these elections are over, a lot of this stuff disappears. So all this talk about Hillary and her emails and Benghazi, all of a sudden when she lost the presidential race, all that went away. Like no investigations, everything kind of just disappeared. And that's just been a pattern with these elections, that there's all this allegations and hype. Now with Trump, Trump's in it. Like Trump has over 90 criminal charges. Biden has 0. And so what would have been a good day or a good week for Democrats went different, because even though this Republican, investigator had concluded that there was no criminal charges for Biden, he threw an interesting boomerang in the mix. He talked about pretty much, and this is the shade of it all, that he doesn't think that, a jury would actually convict Biden because he appears to be this elderly man who forgets a lot and struggles with memory. And he talks about how in the, the interviews, Biden didn't even remember how long he served as the vice president. He didn't remember when his son died, Beau. He, mixed up certain dates and, certain names, and that it just came across that he was this elderly man with massive memory loss. And that he's, some people could view it as a matter of just confusion rather than, deliberate behavior. Even though in one sense, in the report, he says that he did, that he did think that Biden woefully withheld these classified documents, and that in many ways provided some of this information to his ghostwriter, who wrote his book. So there's a lot of shade. And as a result of that shade, the headlines that came out, especially in New York Post and others, wasn't a discussion about the criminal charges not happening, but the fact that his memory, Biden's age and memory, is front and center in the conversation again. Biden did a press conference on Thursday where he was very heated, to say the least, very heated about how he was characterized in that report. He stood 10 toes down that The report, was definitely egregious and, um, was a mischaracterization of him, and was very defensive, very very defensive, and I can see why. I can see why. I wouldn't want any report, kind of playing me out like I'm some, if ineffective goofball. So I can understand that. I can understand that logic of not trying to feel that way. But what made it interesting was that in his press conference, while he's talking about his efforts, in the Middle East right now with the war, he made a slight error, confusing the president of Egypt, or the prime minister of Egypt, with the president of Mexico. And he's made these errors recently. Only a couple of days prior to that, he confused two European leaders that were dead and, spoke as if they were still alive. There's just been these gaps. But Trump has made his own gaps. Trump confused Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi, during the January 6th insurrection. And what's funny is that, just another thing that's been interesting is hearing Republicans say there's no insurrection, but then talking about, how they weren't responsible for the insurrection. And I'm just kind of like, well, if this isn't an insurrection, then how are you calling it one? Like, which one is it? Pick one. Figure it out. You know what I'm saying? Like, either it is one or it isn't. And that's been frustrating. Just to see in so many different ways. But, my whole thing about this election is that we're deep in it. We're deep in it. The likelihood of this being Trump or not is very telling. That we're stuck with these two right now. It looks like it. And look, I'm not I'm not complaining, anymore about them as candidates. I think where I'm at is we got to get to November 5th. It's clear as day who's the better candidate. Honestly, y'all, it's not just who's the president, but the administration. And I think people need to remind themselves that presidents make appointments. Presidents pick Supreme Court justices. Presidents, set the tone for statewide policies. Presidents do more than just be one person. It is a powerful position, but a president represents an entire entity. And if you think that voting for Trump and voting for Biden are the same thing, you're coming from a place of privilege where maybe a lot of these Trump policies may have not hit you because you were educated, you had financial resources and networks that shield you from the impact of that man. But I know people who have been detrimentally impacted by Trump's policies. Trans people, immigrants, different types of people that they felt the difference. And so for people who get on social media and say they don't feel any difference, it's because you're in a position of privilege. And I'm pretty sick and tired of hearing people act like both of these men are the same. They get caught up in this very progressive talk. And listen, I get all those critiques. But sometimes you just gotta be practical, and you gotta be real about where we are as a country. And if you really cared about revolutionizing shit, then you would do more work than what you're currently doing. And I'm not trying to throw shots. I'm just keeping it 100. I see some people that get on these damn platforms and talk all about, if people don't want to vote, they understand, da, 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 da. Shut up. Because you're probably somewhere in a very different situation. And a lot of that comes from the benefits of the policies that the Biden administration has provided people like you. And so it's easy to be, a wealthy, black, queer,
radical, living in California, on TikTok, able to have opinions about every single issue, but benefiting, right? You're getting the meds you need, you're getting the health care opportunities and benefits, you're getting all these different things there. And can you complain about those things? Absolutely. But to be woefully ignorant and to conflate and to say the most out-of-pocket shit for clicks and to get people and to appear to be all these things, you ain't no different than the Charlemagne the Gods and others that create the political miseducation to our public to fuel and to create misinformation that impacts voters. And so I will never lie to you and act like these people are perfect. But we never voted for perfection. The American electoral system has never been who's the most perfect candidate. And quite frankly, none of these people will ever be perfect candidates. However, there is a difference between red and blue here. And there is a stark difference between Republican and Democrat in 2024. And I'm not rolling the dice to see what will happen with the Trump presidency. Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, in 2016 said, oh, we can afford a Trump presidency, and made this bold reference. But I keep thinking about all the people that died. All of the people whose families got torn apart based on Trump's, anti-Muslim policies and bans. All of the frivolous healthcare issues we experienced because of Trump's ignorance. All of the trans people who have had massive setbacks because of Trump's policies and his influence. I mean, Roe v. Wade being reversed, affirmative action being reversed, is a byproduct of Trump Supreme Court appointees. We wouldn't have had Ketanji Jackson Brown had we not had Biden. And so it's easy to get super cynical and super critical while also living your best life. But there's got to be a consideration for other people who are benefiting in ways that you might not. The conversation about student debt loans, cry me a river. Because in so many ways, the people who are crying about it can afford it. And let me be clear when I mean afford it. I'm talking that you're not in deep poverty. You're not in deep poverty. There are people who have been fucked up in the system, right? People who did not finish their degrees and have student loans. And the Biden administration is creating resources to help people who didn't finish their degree or went to a corrupt university that wasn't accredited or, did community college, and things like that. And those people have gotten some relief. I know people who directly have benefited from those policies around student debt. But a lot of people who did 4-year colleges, PhDs, master's degree programs and stuff that have debt, I mean, to some extent, most of those people that I know, yeah, they don't like having the loans. I get it. But at the end of the day, you're not in poverty. You're not, completely downtrodden. You're able to live a life that's a lot better than many of your peers. And I'm talking peers in the national standing point. And in many ways, you're going to be in a position where you will be financially able to eventually pay off those loans or be in a position where, with some time and some patience, the student loan situation will be addressed in a way that you might not have to worry about it to the very end. And so I just think there got to be a little bit of patience and grace in that regard. When it comes to some of the conversations that I'm hearing consistently about Biden. Those problems existed before him. They're becoming more of a topic now because a new group of people are experiencing it and having those issues. But in reality, a conversation about college needs to be had too, right? About outlets, about networks, about predators. But to some extent, I'm looking at some people and I'm just like, it's a first world problem to be upset about certain things that come with what you chose to do. I'm talking from a place that, yeah, I don't have student loans, right? But I also was in a position to afford college, and because of the Obama policies around financial aid that allow people like me to be in a position to do that. I'm speaking in a fortunate position. Some people say, oh, you're so privileged. But it's like, well, no, because the logic would be then, it's like, well, if I'm a first generation college, graduate that did all 4 years, my mother eventually finished her education after I did. But if you were, she was a non-traditional student, but if you were like myself in a position where if you looked at my lived experiences and the adversity I faced to get to college, I didn't have a traditional two-parent household where I had two college-educated people and folks that had degrees that were homeowners and things like that. It's a different conversation. And I hear people often treat folks like myself and my husband like, oh, you all are so privileged. It must be nice. And it's like, it's cute to say that now, but many people like us that come from the backgrounds we come from don't go to college, actually. We don't, because we oftentimes, we were under perception that the financial aid wasn't there. And we had to climb through ropes. We didn't go to private schools. We didn't go to, academies and things to prepare us. We had to go through this fucked up public school system. And so there's a lot of reality checks that I think people need to have when they have these conversations about, student loan debt, college education, who gets what, who affords what. It's annoying. It's the conversation that I see happen, when I remember growing up where rich people will say, oh, these black kids must not be struggling because they got Jordans on. How you got Jordans if you impoverished? So, heaven forbids we get something. Heaven forbids poor people, get something. Heaven forbids that, heaven forbids we get our nails done or we get anything. Oh, we ain't supposed to have nothing, right? Because poverty is often equated with homelessness, which is also inaccurate, right? That's a whole nother experience. That you think that if a person isn't on the streets panhandling, then they're not experiencing, deep poverty. And I think as someone who that know what that looks like, and definitely my husband more so than I, it's such a very fucked up thing. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten more annoyed, and I've checked people, especially people I went to college with. I don't like when people say the word they're poor, especially when they're not, because you got to really understand what poor really means, right? Poor doesn't mean, oh, I can't afford to go to this concert. Poor doesn't mean, I can't get the newest iPhone. Heaven forbids, I got the iPhone, I don't even know what number it is. I got the 13. I can't afford to get the 14 right now. I'm broke. I just hate it. I really do. And I've had to check people on it. I had to. There was a situation. It was actually a girl who was white, and it was about a week ago. We were out. I was out at an event or something, and there was this reference where they said, we were talking about the Usher concert, because Usher had just announced his tour. And they said, they said, are you going to go? And I was like, I don't know, maybe, And they were like, oh, you're so lucky. I can't afford to go to that. I mean, you must be nice. And it was weird because in my mind, I was like, well, you live in Center City, dear, and maybe it's not your priority to go to that concert, but don't act like, you couldn't if you didn't want to. And don't act like, for me to want to go or prioritize it means that I'm really somewhere in this grand Hollywood lifestyle. It's about what you prioritize. In some cases, it could be. And I think people don't check themselves enough. Like, some people can go on trips. They prioritize traveling. They prioritize, going on day trips or traveling to a different city and staying in a hotel and lodge. I mean, that's not a priority of mine. I'm not crazy about traveling like that unless I have work. But that's my own thing, right? But I'm never going to count someone's bag or what's that, pocket check or whatever, wallet check, people who, have that desire, that preference, So I think it's a give and take. But overall, I'm telling people just be mindful. Just be mindful about how you characterize these issues. And I think a lot of what I'm seeing on social media, and I'm seeing in the public discourse, especially from Gen Zers, but really also millennials, about some of these conversations, I'm like, the people who are making these arguments the most are the people who are not being as adversely affected. I mean, granted, there's this mindset that if I get a college degree, there was this mindset to people that my life was supposed to be perfect, or you're not supposed to be able to have all the things. And to be honest, in this economy, it's sad, but it's true. Getting a degree in many ways is a way to get you on a pathway to your career. But your career choice does not guarantee wealth off of the basis of that. And so for me, my expectations were never that extremely high. But I can get some people do. They think, their parents taught them this logic of, if you go to college, you're going to get a good job, get a good career, all these things. And in some ways, there's some truth to that. But in other ways, there's a process. It's a process. And I think we haven't really had real conversations. And that's why I'm doing that with my students now, at Cheney. I'm talking to them about expectations about college, post-college life. That the narrative of I'm going to graduate and become a millionaire, it's just not how it works. But just because you're not a millionaire off the bat doesn't mean the degree wasn't worth it. Doesn't mean that there's not other values to college beyond this intimate, get a big paying job out the jump. It's so many other factors. And I don't know. I just come at this in a different place. And I just want more people to, change their perspectives or consider other ways of looking at it. Because there's just a lot of circular privilege talk and entitlement that I feel like is just missing. That's being regurgitated and repackaged. And then at some point, we gotta, yeah. So in Philadelphia, there's been a lot of conversation around this new city council initiative. This bill just passed in city council that is creating a Kensington caucus. And this has been controversial. Some people like it, some people don't. But I like it. The Kensington caucus is led by residents in Kensington that want to influence policy around their neighborhood, primarily around the opioid epidemic. This is something that's been in the making for a long time. Ketsi Lozada, who is the city council person in the district that holds Kensington, she, came out and spoke about it, and it was a hearing. I was over there at Philadelphia City Council Live on WURD, and I was interviewing her for my show on Thursday during council session. And she spoke about, this need for this caucus. And this is the first of its kind. There hasn't been a caucus. I don't recall a focused community caucus like this before in Philly. I'm not saying it never has happened, but in a long time. But a lot of folks, different people have different thoughts about it. Some of the, folks that are supporting safe injection sites, they're upset But as I've gotten more into this topic and have done my research, I'm getting a little annoyed with the fact that these past 4 years in the Kennedy administration, since the safe injection sites has been experimented and discussed, the issue has not gotten better. The issue has not gotten better. And there has been a concern because you can have a safe injection site, but I thought the plan was initially that it was supposed to include programs and alternatives for people that was dealing with addiction. There were supposed to be alternatives. There were supposed to be, programs and things to help these individuals to get to the path of recovery. And it felt like that hasn't been the case. It just feels like people are getting safe needles or clean needles. The influx of drugs and drug dealers in those areas have gotten worse. The crime and the gun violence over there due to the drugs have gotten worse. And the quality of life for residents have gotten worse. There were people that testified that said that because of the massive out of controlness of these needles, this woman stepped outside her house. It was an older black woman, and stepped on a needle. She was in flip-flops, and she actually got hit by a needle on the ground, on her stoop. And she had to now she has to get tested for HIV every 3 months. So this is serious. This is serious. And these residents are tired. They're fed up. They are sick and tired of being sick and tired. There's got to be some constraints. And again, nobody wants to put everyone behind bars, because we know as black people that when this issue, when drug addiction, there was no sympathy for black people when we were the face. There's still got to be some regulations. And I'm saying that in the sense of like, no, everybody does not need to go to jail. But what do you do with these drug dealers? What are you doing to invest in cleaning up that neighborhood? There's got to be a program to keep the streets clean, like literally. What is being done with sanitation and departments to keep those needles off the ground? The fact that a lot of children are being traumatized seeing what they're seeing in their neighborhoods. And the fact that in many ways, Kensington has become in many ways the shame of the city, because a lot of people don't even want to go out there. It's bad. It's bad for the businesses that are out there. I went down to Kensington to go visit a popular Mexican restaurant, and it was hard eating in there because there were people in and out, and they had a whole pack of like bread and water to give them, because if they had not created that, it's zombie land. It could have been all kind of behavior that would have took place outside or inside of those restaurants that would have made it hard for diners and people to come back. So there's a change that's needed. And, for the people who are on the outside with all these opinions, if you lived over there, if you had to bring family, raise kids in Kensington, you wouldn't think it's okay. To hear gunshots, arguments, people tweaking out, and think that's a functional place to live. You wouldn't. So I'm coming at this in a more holistic approach and manner. Do we want massive police raids to arrest people? Everybody? No. But I also don't think the way the current system is right now is effective either. There's got to be some give and take. That's my take on it.
Now to some other news. Recently there was a big to-do in the press about Snoop Dogg and Master P suing Walmart. Initially, I was a little like, what's going on here? Like, why is this a big deal? But their attorney is Ben Crump, which, represented Trayvon Martin's family when they pursued criminal charges on George Zimmerman. And he's a known civil rights attorney, for better or for worse. He doesn't really win that many cases. And he affiliates himself with Sean King, another, whatever. But in this case, it's interesting because what Snoop Dogg and Master P are alleging is that they own a brand, they're collaborating, they're doing, cereal. Snoop Dogg has a cereal brand, and Master P also is a partner with it in addition to his rap snacks. And pretty much what has been said is that, last year was a big deal when these products went to Walmart and became a big mainstream push. Well, the sales hadn't been doing that well, and there was a reason why. Allegedly, a lot of Walmart stores that had the products shipped were not being seen on shelves. And across the country in various states, fans were going to their local Walmart and basically saying that they don't see these products. And what was also being claimed was that a lot of these products were being still kept in the storage units, but never was on the shelves. And what happens if you're a business person and you don't sell, your product, you have to buy it back, which is a net loss. Basically, they have to, if you're the person who owns the product, you have to basically pay back whatever wasn't sold. You don't get a profit, you don't get anything. And so there had been numerous reports from various fans across the country that was saying they couldn't find these products on these shelves in locations where technically they should have been. So the question becomes, if this store, this particular Walmart says that they don't have, if a fan says they go there and they don't see the product, the assumption is, oh my goodness, it must have sold off the shelves, which means that there should have been a profit for, Snoop Dogg and Master P. Well, ironically, those same stores that did not have those products on those shelves were also stores that were being asked for buyback because they were claiming that they couldn't sell the product. And so there is an arguable racial discrimination that's being alleged here, and this is about to be a major lawsuit. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But it's just one of these things that just, anti-blackness and racism, even in the consumer markets where people are so big on, black-owned products, putting our products in these stores. And even with the attempts to do that, there's still discrimination. And it's almost like you wonder to yourself, damn, Walmart, like, this is an opportunity for you to make money too. You're so spiteful, allegedly. You're so, hateful that you would just like accept this for window dressing, but then not actually turn it into an opportunity to make money. It's baffling. So I'm going to be following this case to see how it plays out. I'm betting that there's most likely going to be some type of settlement. But what does that mean for a lot of, black vendors and black-owned businesses that have products that oftentimes aspire for their products to be sold at a Walmart, to be sold at a Target and places like that? So it's interesting to see how it plays out. Maybe they should put their products in Target. I don't think Tabitha has a problem with that because every time I go and look for Tabitha products, like her dressings and things like that, it's hard to find because people really do buy her stuff off the shelves. I think about, Pay LaBelle pies and things like that. People really do like those products. So it's interesting what they cherry pick. So Shannon Sharpe is once again back in the news because he's been pushing, another big interview. He's done his big one. This time it is Monique. So, Cat Williams was last month. Now Monique is on. And I've struggled with this whole thing because in many ways I do empathize with Monique. I do believe that she experienced a level of blackballing that was disproportionately unfair. I do think that there were certain ways that she reacted to some of it that has created some of this drama. I mean, people forget that in the midst of the drama, she did a comedy show and told Tyler Perry and, Oprah to suck her dick, and, it's like, okay, right? And there's been this consistent conversation that's been nearly a decade. And at a certain point,
I where I'm at with it is that I mean, where do I start? I was let me start with the interview itself. So it's 3 hours, and just like Cat Williams, and the reaction has been very different to her as compared to Cat Williams, for better or for worse. Um, I mean, she talks about her consistent issues she's had with other comedians, including Kevin Hart, D.L. Hughley, who, by the way, D.L. Hughley, regardless how you feel about this Monique situation, he's just trash. I mean, there is a report of his daughter being sexually assaulted, and he didn't believe his daughter until many years later. And it's like, wow, you would choose, just disgusting. His own daughter. And that was brought up, and Monique wasn't lying about that. You can look up and Google those reports. Also, in addition to that, there was another incident with him where I believe allegedly the mistress, he, stepped outside his marriage and had a baby with another woman outside his marriage. And he called it something like it was bittersweet or whatnot. And I'm just like, wow, how despicable. Like, what a piece of trash. So I mean, I believe everything people say about Dale Hughley. I think he's a crumb bum. I never really found him that funny. And I just don't really give two shits about him. I mean, Steve Harvey, has always been weird in recent years. I'm not crazy about Steve Harvey. The things I've heard about him in the industry from various people has never been that pleasant. I mean, the man can dress his ass off and he has a lovely daughter and a lovely wife, but he's not so lovely in my opinion. And so I've been never that crazy about him as well. Some of his antics have been disappointing. I mean, Steve Hightower, who apparently that hot top that he had in the Steve Harvey show wasn't real, allegedly. But just what a disappointment, because I always thought he was a lot more cooler than what he turned out to be. So interesting. But anyway, she shares all these experiences. Shannon Sharpe is a horrible interviewer, y'all. I mean, the reason why his show works is because he has such phenomenal guests that are just like bombastic and filled with like energy and attention. But he's a horrible interviewer. Like it's cringy. Like first of all, people call him mutt mouth because he's just so bad. Like it's bad. Like he stumbles. He over talks sometimes for the wrong reasons. He's very obviously nervous. Like there's this weirdness in him where you can tell that he has relationships with these people and he tries to cover his ass, which just credibility is automatically lost for me, because it's like, if you don't have the ability to dig deep and have a very fair, concise interview with a guest without like feeling like you got to consider all these things. This is why you don't let celebrities and people play these games. This is why personally I can't stand seeing all these celebrities want to be talk show hosts, because they have their bias, like love Jennifer Hudson as an entertainer. I mean, her egots are egoting, right? But, the interview she did with Common was a little cringy for me, because I was just like, I mean, you're dating him. This is your man. And like, I don't know. I didn't feel like it needed to be on the show. It should have been there. They should have had their own vibe, their own situation. I don't feel like we needed to see that the way we did. Just again, this is me as someone in media, as a journalist, giving critique. I mean, entertainment has blurred the line so much that people don't care, for better or for worse, until it's to their detriment. I mean, I think about it with Chris Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo, both disgraced in their own rights. Chris Cuomo, who used to be a former CNN, anchor, who interviewed his brother, Andrew Cuomo, who at the time, during the pandemic, was the man, right? Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, former, right? Disgraced now. But now, I mean, his career has definitely not there. Andrew Cuomo has been quote unquote canceled. And I talk about it in my book, The Case for Cancel Culture. But, just looking at how his career has, devolved for better and for worse. Looking back, their relationship, their brotherly relationship on, CNN was, people thought was cute until it wasn't. And we start to find the conflict of interest and how Chris was allegedly aiding his brother, which they said allegedly led to his termination and his ousting. I mean, white privilege allows him to still have a career. He's in a new TV station or channel or whatever that's like a media hub where he still has some type of career. I think it's called not Newsmax, but some type of channel.
And it's interesting because you're like, what could happen, right? So he's at News Nation now. He's been at News Nation, and the show is called. He used to have the show Cuomo Primetime, but it's been a while. So but anyway, I find Shannon Sharp to just be, he's a Hall of Famer, NFL Hall of Famer. He can play good damn football, but just his current occupation as Shay Shay Club Shay Shay host is just, it's good for ratings and whatever the virality, but he's just bad at hosting. And anybody watching it, you can see. What I am worried about with him though is that you're just letting people go carte blanche with a lot of the erroneous, slanderous, interesting allegations. And while it makes for good entertainment for the public, there's got to be some liability. I mean, if I was any of these people's lawyers, I would be sending cease and desist or, providing some type of statements or things. This is why journalism matter. If I did that show, knowing all the accusations that was made, a real journalist, a person that does respectful clarity, you are supposed to ask for a statement from those who are accused. You may not have to give them airtime to come on the show, but you have to provide an end statement to say, we reached out to the spokesperson for Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, etc., and they gave no comment or they denied the allegations presented. Like there has to be, some other things provided, and due diligence. And given that Shannon Sharp is a very prominent public figure and he is allowing this platform that has clearly, he brags about the numbers that has allowed for a lot of unchecked, non-fact check allegations to run, there is a legal possibility. Because as a journalist, I will tell you that the problem with a lot of these websites is that they think that because they say they're not a journalist, it's okay. Oh no, baby, you better ask, Miss Thing, Tasha K, who was out here, slandering Cardi B and, lost a suit for libel because it's actually libel. Well, not libel because it wasn't in print, but there was, misinformation that she was able to show, provided some emotional distress, financial distress. You can make a case of actual damages and you can sue, especially if it's a major platform where there was a major allegation made and it was not fact checked, or you can prove the person in the position, the facilitator of the show, right? So the person who made the lie, but even the outlet that provides the lie, if they do not show that they demonstrate measurable steps to correct the lie or to address the allegation, they can be sued. So let me back up, put my journalist hat on, because some people may say, what does this mean? Okay, so let's say that I have a major, massive platform. It is a public entity that is widely dispersible. So it could be a magazine, it could be a radio show. In this case, this is a major YouTube platform show like Club Shay Shay. Club Shay Shay is being seen by millions upon millions of people, right? He brags about his stats. It's free. It's accessible. Anyone can look it up on the internet and it generates press. So it is a major media platform. So let's say you get on there, right? And you allow for misinformation to carry on, right? Misinformation about a person, right? That can cause reputable harm to that person's reputation, their image, credibility, etc. Now, if you are in this platform, legally, you have to have, there's several things you need to do. You need to, because listen, these things can still happen, and they do, but let me tell you how it works. You, have to verify the information at the best of your ability. So what that means is that if somebody accuses somebody of doing a crime, accuses somebody of doing something very, inappropriate, accuses them of something that can be detrimental to their reputation or harm, whatever, right? You have to reach out. Now, it's one thing to give an opinion. So if you say, I think, Oprah's ugly, that's an opinion. It's an opinion about someone thinks I'm ugly.
But if you accuse someone of doing harm or a crime or something, inappropriate, and it can cross into legal things or reputation damning things. Like you say, oh, I think that Oprah is a drug addict. Oprah is a prostitute. She, does coke and she does, anything of this nature, right? Accuse someone of sexual assault, different things like that. You would have to, one, do two things. Either one, you have to prove that you've been able to, this has been stuff that's already been reported and you can verify the information. So, for example, if I said that Nicki Minaj's husband is a registered sex offender, I don't have to reach out to Kenneth Petty to say that. There are legal court documents and resources that can confirm that fact without me having to reach out to Kenneth Petty. That's just, that's just how it works. But if somebody accused Kenneth Petty of sexual abuse and it was not criminally charged, it was not something that was previously reported and I can cite the source or in a way, counter it or whatever the case is, then I would need to reach out to Mr. Petty for a comment. And if Mr. Petty does not reach out to comment, I can say, we at Ernest Me Empire, we at Ernestly Speaking, whatever, reached out to Mr. Petty for a comment and he, didn't. Or Mr. Petty has denied the allegations. But you have to provide the both sides in clarifying fact. So when people say both sides, it's not both sides on letting people share their own political views or expressions per se. But in a situation where someone's being accused of something that you cannot verify yourself, then you need to be able to provide that to the audience, especially a situation where a major allegation is being had. There is a lot of allegations being thrown about some of these celebrities that I do feel, listening to the show, I would have been like, Shannon, your team should have reached out to Tyler Perry or Oprah or, some of these other people that was, been named in previous shows. Not necessarily because you're trying to let them, fight, but it's only right. And so I feel like there are times where he thinks he's covering his ass by saying, oh, don't do that or don't say that. But if you're going to let them say it, and if you're not going to edit the footage to, stop it, or you're not going to, beep out certain names, then you are basically stirring the pot. You're monetizing off of this reputation damage, and you're facilitating opportunity for more misinformation and harm to one's reputation. And that is liable. That's a liability. So, everybody want to play journalist until it's time to be a journalist. And it's become a culture that we're seeing a lot on social media. We're seeing a lot of this shit happen on these various platforms. And everybody think they can just go out here and say whatever about people. Shout out to people that are clapping back. What Cardi B did specifically, what Meg Thee Stallion should do, in my opinion, because there were outlets that just falsely lied. The fact that DJ Academics is allowed to walk around here like fucking, Tom and Jerry, looking like one of the mice, the fact that he gets to walk around here with all these lies stuffed up in his big ass cheeks and not face any legal concerns is interesting. Because if I was Meg, I would have taken him down. Some of these fake rap Twitter accounts being ran by white people behind the scenes, Vlad TV, the way that they have allowed certain stuff to run, it's like this train. And everyone just is like, oh, I'm letting this person say this. I'm letting this person do it. The Breakfast Club has been a place that has allowed some of that. Now, they've covered some of their ass in some of these cases. But, again, there is too much wet and slipperiness happening in this industry. And the Tasha K situation with Cardi B should have served as a wake-up call to a lot of people who think that shit's okay. Period. So, so outside of the structure, what I'll say about Monique is that while I've always believed her, when it comes to her pain, you're still here, right? You're still, there appears to be a hill that she appears to be overcoming. She's going back into some movies. Her and Lee Daniels seem to have worked some things out. She got her Netflix special that she's always wanted. There seems to be some opportunity, and I just wish that she would have focused more on how she has overcome a lot of that rather than still appear to be stuck in what happened nearly 10 years ago. Or 10 years, I think it was 10 years ago, actually. I mean, it's been a while since she's won an Oscar. I mean, it's been over 10 years, and I feel like there was a missed opportunity interview. And again, because Shannon is just not built to do this real work, there could have been a conversation about healing and about how she moves, right? And I don't feel like we got enough of that because so much of the conversation was placed on where she was, and I guess still is, rather than how she has persevered. Because I find what has been the most interesting thing about Monique is that while she's talked about the blackbirding, the blackballing and things, I'm impressed by the fact that she has been able to still stay in the public conversation, still be able to, have massive relevance and support. And even if she may not be where she thinks she should be, she's still there somewhere in this. So, yeah, that's what I would say. But honestly, I don't need another month of this shit. I just feel like he needs to just take a break. Like, I don't need another Shannon Sharp special next month. It's interesting because there's such a double standard. When Wendy Williams was doing stuff like this, everybody had so much to say. No one everybody was dragging it, yada, yada, yada. But somehow, when Shannon Sharp do it, it's the new cool thing, I mean, when the gays were doing it, when the women were doing it, it's too messy, too sassy, too this. But this straight man do it, and everyone just lets him just walk around with a pass. Just an interesting observation. So for my Ask Ernest this week, a lot of you all want to know more about my thoughts about the Jay-Z Beyoncé situation. And I guess because a little over a week ago after the Grammys, I was so in the moment that I just was rocking with what Jay said. And a lot of you all kind of felt like, well, you got to say something more about it. And I was like, And so I took some time to reflect on how I really felt. And there's so much there. And I it's so much there. But I'm going to break this down, right? Because this conversation is just, as somebody who's in the industry, somebody who's going to various award shows, who votes in award shows, who have submitted work for awards consideration. I want to start by, I'm going to take my time like a pastor with this. Look, I, like the next person, am all about people getting their just due. Last year I was blessed to win Journalist of the Year by the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists. This was an award I've been chasing for many years, and a lot of people felt like I was snubbed in the past. I was. And felt like it was long overdue. But when I won it in a great year. 2023 was a transformational year. It was a great year. The ceremony was awesome. To be there in a room with all my friends and my family and just be, in that moment at that time. The award, and when I received it, came at the perfect time in my life and in my career. And it just felt real full circle. And the previous years that I was quote unquote snubbed, I could have gotten it, right? I should have gotten it, I felt like, in certain years. There were other years that I felt like, this was my year. Like, I was killing the Philadelphia media. Like, I should have won. But interesting enough, last year was just such a super year in general. And if I didn't win, I mean, who would have been, And I thought that many other years, actually. But I say all that to say that even when I didn't win, I had my Susan Lucci moments. I always was reminded that I still had relevance. I still was out here. I was still out here being super successful. I think of Amy Adams, Glenn Close, who have not won Academy Awards, which is a travesty. These women still have incredible careers. They've made huge marks in cinema. They have won, other awards. They have a fan base that's phenomenal. And some of these people who win these awards, right, the Best Actress awards, you don't even remember them. No shade to, Marion Cotillard. But like, what happened to her after she won? Brie Larson got a good career, but she hasn't really given us an Oscar-worthy film since Room. And that's the film she won for. Jennifer Lawrence, was the it girl for a long time. But, nowadays her acting, her performances in the film she's in, it just hasn't really, grew. But I think about other actresses like, Angela Bassett, who has consistently been performing and churning out wins and awards. And so you have to look at the overall picture. Diana Ross never won a Grammy. Okay? Miss Ross, the boss, has never won a Grammy. Mariah only has had about, 6? Whitney only had a few. Not double digits. A lot of your faves in the industry has won a few. Not as many as some people. And so, relatively speaking, when I hear people talk about things being robbed or denied, like as if it's this major catastrophe, I hear some of it, but then I also have to put things in perspective. So, Beyoncé, for example, she has the most Grammys for an artist ever. She's the most awarded performer in Grammy history. She has 28 Grammys, I believe. She's up there. I think she has 32. My bad. 32. Her and Jay-Z are tied as the most nominated artists in Grammy history with 88 nominations apiece. But with her 32 Grammys, she has not won, with the exception of Song of the Year for Single Ladies. She's not won in the general categories. She's never won Record of the Year. She's never won Best New Artist. She's never won Album of the Year. And she won Song of the Year one time. Which a lot of people, with a career as illustrious as hers, one would argue that she's been robbed. Which, one could argue, right? Lemonade was a great album. Renaissance, a phenomenal album. She did I Am Sasha Fierce, Beyoncé self-titled. There was a lot of albums she has done. And so there's those respects. However, in retrospect, award shows and the games around award shows are very political and they're very interesting. And Matthew knows, her father, who used to be her manager, he was hitting on something. And a lot of times Beyonce doesn't really like Matthew speaking because, Matthew isn't perfect. He has his flaws. But Matthew knows the game because they don't talk about the game. But there's campaigns, y'all. Like, there's campaigns. And listen, if we're going to play the award show game, you play the campaign or you don't. You could say it's not fair. You think things should be meritocracy, but then let's be fucking real. So let's just start off. Award shows are political. They are campaigns. There is no real merit, arguably, to some of this stuff. A lot of it requires big record labels, big teams with big money that are willing to do things to secure wins, right? And it varies, right? I mean, the Grammys started regulating it recently, but in the past, it was not like that, okay? Record labels will throw parties for your consideration parties, invite people over for listening sessions, private performances, tickets to go on tours, massive, freebies and baskets. You heard about this with the Golden Globes in the past, how, people trying to figure out why did Emily in Paris get all those nominations. Well, Netflix sent judges and members of the for Hollywood Foreign Press who judges the Golden Globes, they sent them to Paris and let them see the set and all that. Well, if you gave me a fucking trip to Paris, I might, it might play a role in me want to know more about Emily in Paris. Music artists, would do that. They would, if you're a big star, you're giving access to the Recording Academy and some of the judges in different genres. And so in the beginning of Beyonce's career, when she was winning more Grammys in her early career, Beyonce played the game. Matthew knew the game. Matthew knew. Television performances, lots of press, lots of media, lots of ads, lots of for your consideration, things. Private shows Beyonce would go to, parties and outings, gift bags, and all the things that, you need to do to try to, appeal to the categories. Now, with the Grammys, what's interesting is that genre categories were easier to manipulate because because not everybody voted for R&B. Only a select committee would vote for R&B. And then the general categories, everybody voted in the general categories. And so I think what Matthew's strategy was in the early parts of Beyonce's career, which you see with a lot of the Grammys she wins in R&B categories, is that Beyonce is one of the most popular R&B artists of our time. It was nothing. I mean, the voters and fans were like, "Oh, we love Beyonce. We want to see her. We want to get access. We can get a concert, tickets, whatever." It was easy to get those voters to be on board, and so she won in a lot of categories. When I look back, some of the categories Beyonce won in, I'm like, she wasn't the best in some of those categories. I feel like, there were categories where someone like Melanie Fiona should have won, or Fantasia should have won, or Keisha Cole arguably could have won a Grammy in certain categories. You look at some of the other R&B artists of that time, they could have been considered. Brandy should have won more Grammys, for certain songs and albums that she did. Monica should have won more Grammys or got more buzz. There's Mary J. Blige has won a few, right? She's won a good number, arguably. But a lot of other bigger names that have influenced the culture and the music scene, did not win, because if Beyonce got 32 Grammys, that means a lot of people had to lose. And a lot of her Grammys were in R&B category. So a lot of Black women, a lot of, talented brothers who were great musicians that could have got some of that love didn't. Because Beyonce swept. When we think about, Jasmine Sullivan, who finally won, a couple years back, it wasn't that she wasn't making good music. I mean, a lot of y'all say, why this person didn't win a Grammy? Why this person never got a Grammy? You got to look at the years when they were out here in the industry. That was when the Beyonce, domination took over, where literally the industry acted like the only artist who was out was her. And the only person that reputably won some Grammys who was in different categories was Rihanna, because Rihanna was pushed to the pop categories. She did get a couple R&B things, but they would move the category. So whenever Beyonce took a break, Rihanna got a couple, not as many. Rihanna doesn't have that many Grammys, but she has some. But there was a setting, so a couple of people could slide in when Beyonce took off. But oftentimes, I think about one category where Beyonce won, where sometimes Beyonce didn't even have to be, with an album, and just a guest feature or some random song she did would win. I'll never forget how Dangerously in Love live won in like 2011 or something like that. Even though Dangerously in Love, the song, came out in 2003, but like years later, I think 2009 or something, she won a Grammy for it. And it was the weirdest random thing where I was like, this song is old, but somehow I fell into one of these R&B categories and she won a Grammy for it. And so, there is a lot of under-honored and awarded talented R&B artists for a period of time. I mean, the other one that was taking awards when Beyonce wasn't in the mix at times was Alicia Keys. So Alicia Keys would win some too. So there was always this like trade-off at that time between Alicia and her, kind of like the rap categories. I remember there was a period of time where it was like Kanye, Jay-Z, and Eminem. They were the only ones getting Grammys. So a lot of your faves, I mean, I don't care much for Drake, but Drake only has like 1 or 2 Grammys. Like, I think like 1 or 2 Grammys. He doesn't have that many. Kendrick now dominates the rap categories now. He just owns them when he drops music. But every blue moon, somebody might slide in and get something. I think J. Cole has one or two or something. Future has fortunately won one, but in collaboration with a Kendrick. But these these categories, some of these genre categories, are literally dominated by only a small few group of people. And so that crossover, right, into mainstream, pop is more competitive. Pop isn't dominated by one person. Like Taylor Swift does not get all the pop Grammys. She only has 14 Grammys, which isn't just only, but Taylor's Grammys go from country to pop to general categories. But interesting enough, she's never won Song of the Year. She never won Best New Artist. She's never won Record of the Year. She's only won Album of the Year in the general categories. A lot of her Grammys have come from pop and have come from country categories. But those are very competitive, categories. Like, it's never a major sweep. Now, Adele has had a couple of sweeps, like 2 major sweeps. But outside of that, the pop categories are very more competitive and versatile. Bruno Mars has won a few of them. Billie Eilish had a moment. This year, Miley Cyrus finally won 2 Grammys in her entire career. A couple of people did. And, last year, Beyoncé really swept the R&B category. She lost for, I think, Plastic on the Sofa, and Money Long won for Hours and Hours, which was well-deserved. But for the most part, Beyoncé swept a lot of those R&B categories that she was in the categories for. And, how many other artists could have had or woulda, shoulda, coulda won or got opportunity. So when you consider all of those politics, then you get to Album of the Year, and it's the general audience, right? And the campaigns begin interesting because you start to look at, okay, well, who's campaigning for what? And it's obvious that in certain cases, I think what Taylor Swift's strategy has been is that Taylor just, whether she deserves it or not, because at this point, let's be clear, the meritocracy is not there. So if we're acting like any of these people should win Album of the Year, I mean, listen, back in the day when Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, were winning, that was a different era. Today, I mean, I would say the 2000s, ever since Lauryn Hill has won, it's been interesting. Outkast was a deserving winner. I'll say Casey Musgraves, her win for Golden Hour was well-deserved. I mean, like I said, Outkast for Speaker Box of Love Below, that was a great album. But Billie Eilish when she won, Adele when she won her first one for 21 was well-deserved. But a lot of these other wins, I just can't justify. Like Jon Batiste winning, that was just random. Herbie Hancock winning that year. Robert Plant, when Ray Charles won posthumously and he beat Kanye for Graduation and he beat, Amy Winehouse for Back to Black. That was just so random. Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, Raising Sand, when that won one year. The Joni Letters, the Herbie Hancock, like all these random ass albums that would win. I mean, when, Beck won over Beyonce, it was just so random. And I just never felt like those albums should have won. Now, I'm not saying that mainstream albums have to win, but arguably when you look in certain categories, there's just some albums that just have been cultural, Like I think Norah Jones should have won the year she won for Album of the Year. That was a very groundbreaking album. It was great music, but it was a moment. Like Come Away With Me, that was a big fucking album. Santana for Supernatural, like that's a good Album of the Year win. Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, a phenomenal Album of the Year win. Whitney Houston, The Bodyguard soundtrack, a big deal. But there's been a lot of wins lately that I'm just kind of like, what? And so Midnights by Taylor Swift, I am a concerned Swiftie, just wasn't that good. And respectfully, I mean, I get why it's in the category because it sold well, but
there was not a lot of songs on that album that was worth replay. I personally like maybe three or four songs, maybe at most. Everything else I just skip. I don't really need it. Um, Folklore. I definitely feel like she deserved it for Folklore. 1989, I'm mixed, but I get it. The gag is the album she really deserved it for the most was Red, and that's when she lost to what's that group? Daft Punk for Random Access Memory. I just felt like Red should have won. And, she had already won for Fearless, and that I don't think she should have won for Fearless. I mean, one could argue Beyonce could have won that year, but that wasn't Beyonce's best work. But there was other artists in that genre, in that category that year that was more worthy, in my opinion. I mean, when you think about it, it's a lot of albums that have been, I mean, again, Kanye's a mess now, but Kanye has had several of, moments in time where, he should have won. I think about it all the time, like some certain years. So the year that, I mean, I think about like, Taking a Long Way should have, won album of the year. It was great. So the year that Fearless won, I mean, The Fame by Lady Gaga, I think should have won that year. You had Dave Matthews Band, Big Whiskey, and the group Crux King. You had the E&D by the Black Eyed Peas. You had I Am Sasha Fierce by Beyonce. And you had The Fame by Gaga. I would have gave it to Gaga that year, to be honest. The next year, The Suburbs by Arcade Fire won. I feel like that was a good win. They deserved. The next year, Adele won for 21. The next year, Babel won for Mumford and Sons. Some people thought Frank Ocean should have won for Channel Orange. Mixed thoughts on that. The next year, Random Access Memory won. Daft Punk won. Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick was in that category. The Heist by Macklemore, Ill. And then Red by Taylor Swift. I think she should have won that year. The year that Morning Phase happened by Beck and Beyonce was in there. I mean, for history, I think Beyonce should have won. But I would have been mad if X, or as we know it is Multiply by Ed Sheeran, would have won that year. The next year, Taylor Swift won for 1989. I can see it. But I also could have saw To Pimp a Butterfly. But let's give it to her for 1989, right? Next year, 25 beats Lemonade. We all know Lemonade should have won. And the fact that Anti wasn't even nominated was a problem. The next year, in 2018, 24 Karat Magic by Bruno Mars wins. But that should have been won by, in my opinion, Kendrick Lamar for Damn. I mean, it won a Pulitzer Prize. And even Melodrama by Lorde was worthy. The next year, Golden Hour wins. It should have won. Billie Eilish wins the next year, which I agree with. Folklore wins the next year. I agree with. John Batiste wins for We Are. I would have made the case that, maybe, Billie Eilish could have won for Happier Than Ever. Or, if you really want to take it there, Olivia Rodrigo for Sour would have been a better win. Last year, Harry's House won over, Renaissance, which I think Renaissance should have won that year. And then this year, SZA should have won S for SOS over Midnights. So there's a lot of, things that could be said about the categories. But I really do feel like at a certain point, if you're going to play the game, play the game. Which brings me up to another point later in this episode. But I do think that at the end of the day, Taylor Swift and Beyonce are both billionaires. They both have immense wealth and capital. Awards are cute, but at the end of the day, they are running the economies of major countries and in cities and states and regions. There are like countries out begging for Taylor Swift to do a tour, begging for Beyonce too, because it would stimulate their economies. Like a Grammy is cool, it's whatever, but we as a people also gotta stop weighing it. Like, not only when it comes to Black people not getting their quote unquote just due, but considering the fact that one person should have a monopoly over it at all. And history, in my opinion, if you have a competitive music industry, no shade, but I'm going to say this, and it's going to hurt some feelings. But the state of music, for anyone to get 32 Grammys, I don't think Beyonce deserves all 32 of her Grammys.
And quite frankly, the fact that she won as many as she done in recent years should tell you the state of music. Because you know what? Winning Grammys back in the day used to be an honor. When Michael Jackson won 8 Grammys in one night for Thriller, no one questioned that because Thriller is the greatest selling album of all time. It's also one of the most culturally influential albums of all time. So when he won those 8 Grammys, I mean, everybody understood. Since then, there's been several artists that have won multiple Grammys. You know, Beyonce has won 5 in one night during the Dangerous in Love era, which I thought was grossly, too many. She won 6 during the I Am Sasha Fierce. I would have loved her to see them 6 wins for an album like Renaissance, which was way better. I think that the fact that there's a lot of artists who can now get that many Grammys in one night tells you the current state of music. See, back in the day, the girls had to fight to get wins. When you look at the categories that Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, Madonna, Janet, Celine Dion, Barbara Streisand, these girls had to compete, okay, to be in the category. When they would get those awards and say, I'm so honored to be in this category, because you was in the category with Sarah McLachlan, with Mariah Carey, with Sheryl Crow, with Madonna. Like that's serious. You look at these categories now. Oh, I'm in the category with Ice Spice. Like what? Like Lizzo's in the category with, you look at some of these people in these categories, you're like, well, damn, if you just look at talent alone, you in a category, let me not name no more. I'm just saying, you look at some of these categories, like Jay-Z was, rightfully so talking about, some of these people don't deserve to be in those categories. And so the quality of the music has just gotten in many ways bad. And so even winning a Grammy in a respective category doesn't even feel as competitive or anymore. It kind of feels predictable. And it's because of the elite, the super wealthy, the super, pop, the super whatever, that now you can predict who's going to win now, even if they don't deserve to win. What was interesting in this cycle was that a lot of film music critics, which a lot of music critics can't vote in the Grammys, not members of the Recording Academy, every major critic last year said that Renaissance should have won Album of the Year, right? Folks that study music said that. This go around, everybody was like, SOS should win. Because SOS had all the elements to win. It had a #1 hit. It had a run, right, on the charts. It had a very successful tour. There was a cultural impact and conversation around the music. Everything about SOS and SZA warranted that. But arguably, Midnights did too. Except my issue with Midnights was that the quality of the music was not on the same level as SOS. SZA spent 5 years making that album. I mean, the way that Taylor Swift turns out albums, I mean, it's impressive as a hustle, but as a craft, you have to take a moment back and say, I mean, at some point, you're becoming the Colleen Hoover of making music. And if you don't know who Colleen Hoover is, or Kathleen Hoover, I think it's Colleen Hoover. This is a white woman who got like countless books on New York Times bestsellers list. I mean, she writes all of these like novels and, and some of the books are just not even good, but she has a fan base that just eats them up. And so she just churns them. And the books sell, it's mass consumption. But we're at the point where personally for me, I feel like, Taylor Swift has become the McDonald's of making music. Like nowadays, it just seems like she just puts out whatever. And Drake too, like it's not just Taylor, but like I look at Drake, like Drake just puts out anything on the internet and it does its big one, right? It does the quick iTunes sales. So everyone gets hype. But then after that, it's like, it's fast food. You don't remember anything. We're not going to remember. The only thing you're going to remember about Midnights is the Eras tour, which was a big fucking tour. But most of them songs on there, you're not going to remember. You're not going to care about. I mean, Anti-Hero's a standout. Karma's cute. Lavender Haze is a bop. But a lot of those other songs on there, I'm not going to remember. And that just tells you where we are with the state of music. So, I say all to say that it brings me to my next, major point. So, before I get into the Super Bowl, because I have a lot to say about what went down, movies. I did watch the Super Bowl, and I'm super excited about Wicked.
Wicked is coming. I don't like Cynthia Erivo personally. I find her, some of the things she has said in the past, you can Google it, has been very interesting and problematic. However, I must say that her as Alphaba was one of the best casting decisions I've seen in a long time. I think she, based on what we're getting from her, she seems phenomenal. I see a lot of award nominations. Ariana Grande as she's so I know Alphaba, and then I forget what the name of the other character. Because I mean Alphaba was the character for me, in Wicked, but it's Kristen Chenoweth play Glinda the Good Witch. So you know, Ariana Grande is playing a white woman. Well, she is white, but she's playing, Glinda, and I think in his role, she's definitely playing a white woman, which is good. I'm excited to hear "Defining Gravity" from Cynthia Erivo, how she's going to sing it. I'm excited about this. A lot of musicals have come out, and I've not been excited. I will say the Color Purple musical was good. Wish would have got more love in the awards season. For it to only get one Oscar nomination for Daniel Brooks, I felt like was a little disappointing. But musicals and film, it's a complicated relationship. Sometimes they love it, like Les Mis, or Les Miserables is how you pronounce it. Or you get a big one like Chicago, which is one of my all-time favorite film to movie to stage to film, adaptions. It's incredible. Chicago is an incredible film musical. It's the epitome to me. It hasn't been. I don't feel like there's been another musical that has gotten me as enthusiastic. Well, Dreamgirls. That's my husband's all-time favorite. Dreamgirls was incredible too, and for it not to be nominated for Best Picture, even though it had got like 10 other nominations, was just ridiculous. But Dreamgirls was another great ass musical. Let me see, Rob. I mean, I wasn't as crazy about it. I get the hype. I mean, Anne Hathaway won the Oscar finally, so that was good. But there hasn't really been as many, recent years. I mean, Chicago was like 20 years ago. So when I'm like, look at me, show my age. But Moulin Rouge, I remember that back in the day. That was good. They don't make them like that anymore. So Wicked has potential. I think Wicked has potential because it's a popular Broadway musical, and I've dreamed of this day of them making a film of it, and I'm surprised that it didn't come out as soon as it did because so many other musicals have come out as films. I'm thinking about like In the Heights, which was a failure. Even Mean Girls, there's a Mean Girls musical, which was cute. It was cute. But like even The Color Purple came out much later and film came faster. But they held Wicked to the chest. And so to see Wicked in this way is incredible. I don't need a Hamilton, but I feel like it's gonna come, even though we had like some version of Hamilton, but I don't know. I can see them trying it though, but it's like we don't need it. We don't really need it. But they'll try it, because it's Hollywood. Outside of that, I'm excited about this film. Part 1 is coming out, I think, around Thanksgiving. And then part 2 comes out the following year. I don't know how they're going to play that up with the award cycle. But it's kind of ballsy that they're doing a part 1 and a part 2. That's kind of ballsy. Because for award consideration, people might say, well, I'll give it to them in part 2 versus part 1. We'll see. We'll see. But this could either be the best thing ever or the worst thing. I don't see no in between. Either people are going to love this or they're going to hate it. Like Cats, which should never came out. So, to the Super Bowl. I must say I was not surprised the Chiefs won. The fix was in. I really wanted the 49ers to win. Because they were the underdogs. And I like the underdog. I like to support underdogs. Mr. Johnson and I went to Dr. Parks and Joe's house, which was like literally like a couple of doors down. And we had like a little Super Bowl party. We had Pizza Plus, which was good. good ass pizza, not too far from us. And I didn't even realize the pizza was that good. And it had some good ass wings too. Really, really good. So they hosted us at their crib and we had a ball. And yes, we're gonna talk about a lot of surprises that happened. I was supporting the 49ers because I really um I just wanted to support the underdogs. I just felt like the Chiefs, they won already. So here they come again. I just, But of course, as you all saw, the Chiefs won again. First time in 19 years, I believe, nearly 20 years, that there was back-to-back championships like that. So I guess now they're a dynasty, allegedly. I mean, Mahoney's, he deserves. Black quarterbacks don't get enough love. But, they got their rings. Taylor Swift was, she brought her black friend, which is this time Ice Spice, who was there, Lana Del Rey, Blake Lively, all the friends and fans. I mean, her on the screen getting hype. I don't care about it based on a gender perspective. I just feel like everything is being forced on us. I just feel like there was a time at one point in time where I don't know. I just feel like everything about Taylor Swift at this point, the overexposure, I feel like it's going to turn fans against her. And I really believe it because overexposure, no matter who you are, is too much. I remember there was a time where Beyoncé was just super overexposed. And a lot of that was Matthew trying to make her a big star, which he did. But at a certain point, you do gotta take a break. And that's one thing I have to say about Beyonce, even Rihanna, that they take these breaks and, they live their lives, they have some experiences, and then they drop music or, whatever, or sometimes just products. And then they make us, we have something to listen to. We have something to consider. It's something we got to think about. We don't see that with Taylor right now. And I feel like the overexposure, it just gets calculated. It just feels so scripted. And I don't know. I really, really hope that after this year, after this Grammy cycle, she takes a break. I just personally, for her own health, but also just for the public, because it's going to get nasty. I feel like there's going to be a turn. And it's unfair because she's really talented, but we've seen this happen nearly 10 years ago with 1989 when she, had that. And it was like, there was that moment where everybody was loving her, hyping her, and then it kind of turned. And so history does repeat itself. But in this case, there's just a lot of things she's doing that just kind of like, it's like, And a lot of people are tired of her in general. I mean, I read an article written by a black woman writer for HuffPost talking about just how her brand of feminism never resonates with actually women of color, like how it lacks the inclusivity that she preaches of and how performative she has been in her attempts, to try to make herself this all-woman, brand, which has always been, at the expense of, I'm a woman, I got something, so no one can say anything wrong, because if they do, it's sexist, and, but it lacks nuance, clearly. Black feminists know that. It lacks nuance, it lacks legitimate accountability. And so if you don't have those factors in your feminism, then is it really feminism or just another reinforcement of white supremacy? And so it's just, I see a lot of things that she has done, and as a Swiftie as a concerned Swiftie, it's put a sour taste in my mouth. And it's hard to deny recently because it's been a little too much. So, but outside of that win and all the stunts, we gotta talk about Usher. Usher's halftime show has definitely impacted my rankings of all time Super Bowl performances. My number one is still Prince, but I've put Usher at number two. Number three is Beyonce. Number four is Michael Jackson. Number five is Janet Jackson. Number six is Rihanna. Number seven is Madonna. And everybody else can fight for the rest. But those are my top seven. And I must say, Usher delivered. He did not leave one crumb behind. What I love the most about Usher's performance is, one, the mic was on. He was singing live. But he danced his ass off. The costume changes were on point. The song selections. I mean, there were songs. What I appreciated the most about it was that
He listened to his fan base. He performed R&B hits. He performed a couple of pop bops, but he really gave us a lot of his collection. This man had 15 minutes to do his thing, and he ate. And what I also loved about it was that he wanted to remind everybody that R&B as a genre is not dead. And he reminded his country that R&B is still here. And what I loved the most about the performance was his incorporation of black women in R&B. Her is out here playing straight guitar. Alicia Keys, who had some, vocal struggles, but at this point, what do we expect? But she, was up there on that stage, had a moment. It was great to see Lil Jon. It was great to see Ludacris. But he had fun. It looked like fun. I mean, he had the kappas. It was a very black performance. And he didn't hold back. He did everything we wanted him to do. He took that shirt off. He showed that body. He was giving zaddy. He just really understood the assignment. And it was a very solid show. And I feel like it was because he made it a point to, you could tell this man's practiced for this. He's waited his whole life for this experience. And for years, we the fans kept saying, we want Usher. We want Usher. Why can't Usher do the show? He deserves to be amongst the greats. And Usher has put a lot of work into his rebrand. In this new era, like Usher's in a new wave, right? The Vegas residency, he's going back on tour. He's got a new album out now. But he really has put in the work to make him be back in the conversation in a way that a couple years ago, we wasn't really thinking about him. We loved Usher, but there's a new wave of him. And I think he put in that work so he can get this moment. And he damn sure worked hard for it, earned it, and proved it wasn't in vain. And so, yeah, I just have nothing but praise for the performance overall. I mean, the songs he chose, I mean, he delivered. It was outstanding. Definitely the number two. I just feel like Prince is just, that performance, the rain, everything about what it represented and symbolized, nothing's going to compare to that. But to get number two is, it's the highest honor to me. But just when you thought that was the conversation, Beyonce had to say, hold my beer. Or in this case, hold my whiskey. Beyonce has announced Act 2, her second album in this trilogy, is coming out on March 29th, which will be a month before Taylor Swift's album that comes out April 19th, I believe. Interesting. Beyonce is going full country. 2 songs off of this new project. How she broke the news was iconic. Unlike getting on an award show and announcing it during the middle of winning an acceptance speech, she makes it a point to do this epic commercial about breaking the internet. And then, funny enough, at the end, she just says, drop the new music. I'm like, what is she talking about? And quickly after, the website changes. 2 singles off of the new album is dropping. And this is something Beyonce don't do often, where she's given us 2 songs versus, one little single or announcement. She drops 2 new songs. They're country. They're great. And I'm just like, whoa, this is what we want. This is what we want to see. When Beyonce delivers, she delivers. Like, she just basically take over. And when she comes, you can't even change it. So she has a song out right now. And the 2 songs. So the first song is called Texas Hold'em. It's outstanding. The songs are apparently on Tidal. I heard it from a friend who has Tidal. I don't have Tidal, but apparently it's on Tidal, which is interesting. It's funny because Tina knows her mother says on Tidal rather than Tidal, but she put it on Tidal, and so people are losing it on the internet. Apparently iTunes is going nuts. It's Texas Hold'em and 16 Carriages. Both of these songs are fun. Texas Hold'em is a more livelier banjo country energy. And then the second song, 16 Carriages, is more of a more reflective song, but they're both country based. And I love it. Like, I love it. And I stand. I stand. Looking forward to this new. I mean, there was rumors that she was going to perform at the Sphere, but then I remember Yvette, Noel Scholl, who said that wasn't true. But people were just persistent that it was going to be this show. And I just tell people, stop trying to guess Beyonce's moves. That's the one artist that I just can't predict anything from her. I can't predict anything. I can't even play with her because she will always pivot into something else, and then you're stuck being like, oh, wow. So don't even try to predict Beyonce's moves. If you know what's good for you, just enjoy the journey. What this also means is that, this is Grammys. We know that now Beyonce's a contender for Album of the Year because it's Beyonce, and so is Taylor Swift. And so are we going to see a Swift Knowles face-off next year at next year's Grammys? Are we going to see this happen again? Is Billie Eilish dropping an album? Who's coming next? It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, did Jay-Z lay the foundation early to plant the seed? All I know is that Taylor cannot win another Grammy. Album of Year Grammy. At this point, you got 4. But, what will happen? Beyonce going to country will be interesting because this album is going to create a lot of, I guess what we'll say controversy. I remember how she collaborated with the Dixie Chicks to do Daddy Lessons at the CMA Awards, the Country Music Awards, and that was a big conversation. It's interesting because I feel like Beyonce is trying to remind people of the Black roots to these music genres. With Act 1, it was ballroom dance music, and she reminded us that Black, artists were responsible for this dance music. And she won a electronic dance album, win. Because Black people, inspired house music, did all of that, right? So I wonder if she's trying to compete in a country album category, but didn't get the nomination. And can she get the R&B teen voters? Can she get a larger white voter scene? Can she get country artists to get on board and support it? It's going to be interesting seeing her navigate this. But it's fascinating. It's definitely fascinating to see it. Yeah. And then Taylor Swift's next album, clearly if it sells, which it's going to sell, it'll be interesting to see how both of these albums are going to face off in this upcoming year. So I'm staying tuned. It's going to be very interesting to see how this play off. As far as good TV goes, I watched the new season 3 premiere of Abbott Elementary, and I'm in love with it, y'all. I love the first episode. It was a 1-hour episode, but it was like part 1, part 2 around career day. And it was phenomenal. The cameos, the story, every time you think a show like Abbott cannot exceed expectations, you're reminded why this show was so good and why it's addicting and why it's must-see TV. I know The Bear won Best Comedy. I really wanted Abbott, but I feel like, The Bear's about to do they're filming season 3 right now, but season 2 is going to be a consideration for the following, Emmys because of the scheduling. And so I'm hoping that this new season Abbott takes some of the momentum off of The Bear for that Best Comedy consideration. It's going to be hard, but I feel like Abbott just really looks like it's going to be a really good season. They're playing around with different roles, different dynamics this season. I don't want to tell it for those who haven't watched it yet, but they just are on their game. They're in their groove. And it would be nice to see this show win Best Original Comedy. Quincy's already won Best Actress. Shirley Ralph has won. I feel like Janelle Jones is coming strong. It would be nice to see her get the Supporting Actress win, because I wonder if Ayo is going to get moved to Best Lead Actress in a comedy for the second season of The Bear. So if the dynamics changes with casting, does that open up for an opportunity for a Janelle James to finally win, given the fact that in the past that win was, for, Cheryl Lee Roth won, and then previously before that, it was Ted Lasso, but Ted Lasso's out the conversation. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out, but we'll see. But I will say Abbott has been very good. It has been a very good season. And this has been a very good episode, a good week. I'm looking forward to my anniversary. I'm looking forward to Valentine's Day. I'm looking forward to Mr. Johnson's birthday. All of that, I believe, is going to happen right before I do my next episode. So it's going to be a very romantic, loving, ceremonious week. And I'm going to take some time to rest and to get ready for my students and do all that. So, as always, be well and be best. Ernestly Speaking is recorded in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. To stay up to date with the latest on the show, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Mr. Ernest Owens. Use the hashtag Ernestly Speaking to tell me what you thought about this episode, and check out my website at ernestowens.com.